Someone asked me on the channel if I would run through the basics of the T1 control panel. So this video runs through what each one of these buttons does. It doesn't go into detail about what's behind all the buttons, but it tells you how the T1 operates, because this was one of those synthesizers from the late 80s, early 90s, where the front panel became extremely streamlined. Gone were all the knobs and buttons that allowed you to set envelopes and filters and other things like that. All of a sudden you came down to a menu structure and a very simplified interface. So, if you switch your T1 on, this is the screen you're presented with, and this is your work area. Now, like many synths conceived in the late 80s that went digital, the knobs and the faders and the rotary controls and the switches were all gone in favour of this new digital setup, which meant that your work area on the keyboard was this wide. Even though the keyboard itself is 1.5 meters long, that is your work area, which is probably around about half a meter or thereabouts. And everything you do is in this screen here. Now this video is set up to sort of like go through what the basics of the T1 are. So if you start off on this screen, Combi 1, which is called Cosmic Rain. And that's where you will start. But let's go over the basics. Remember, like, comment, subscribe to the channel. Go over to Instagram and follow me there. Go over to Facebook, follow me there. That's where the normal notices are. And consider becoming a Patreon. So I'll start with the Combi screen. And I'm on Combi 8 at the moment, which is probably as good as any Combi to sort of give you the basic functionality. Combi 8 sounds like that. Okay, and what a combination is on the T1 is a combination of up to 8 programs. So you can have 8 programs within your T1 that can create a combi. Now for this particular combi, if I was then to look at the next line down, which is this line here, and use these cursor keys, which is numbered A through H at the bottom, I can tell you that this is a combination of pan drops, Dreampad 2 and harp. And then you can see the other ones are all set to off, which means I don't actually have a combi in, or I don't have a program in there to generate this sound. So this sound itself is generated from those 3 programs. The next line down here, so if I was to use this down button here, tells me the level each one of these is set at. So I can see that this is set at 99, 0 to 99. This one's set at 99 and this one's only set at 70. So you're going to get not as much pan drops for your Dreampad and harp. Okay, so that's what that means. Then if there are additional screens available to you, you can get to those values by using the page up and down. So there's only effectively 2 screens within the Combi screen itself. This is all about MIDI channels. So this particular sound is receiving on MIDI channel A, as people would know. There is an A and a B on the T1, and it's receiving on channel 1. Okay, and the other thing is on this one, if I go down like that, that's the velocity. So that's how hard I hit the key. What will be transmitted? 1, 0, 0 through 127. So these are all set between the maximum range, but you can actually shorten that range if you want to. That is the Combi screen, and to navigate Combis, if I go back like that, you can use this. I was going to say you can use the value button, but the value button only works in the individual ones. You use these arrow keys, or you can use a menu here to select different combis. So first value, first the top line, the bank page, you then see a list of all the tones or combis that are in that bank. Let's go for 48, and we're now on you're on a different Combi. So that's kind of the basics of Combi. The next button along here is Program. And there are two program banks on this particular T1, which was one more than the M1. You have Program A and Program B. Okay, and what you get here is 100 different programs. Let's go for 40, which I think was Dreampad 2. It is. So this was one of the that was on the one of the combis that I had up a minute ago. A very similar interface in that you use the arrow keys up the top here to navigate between combis, or you use programs, or you use the keys here to navigate between programs. Like so. Then using these up and down keys, you get into the menu here, and it gives you a range of different values that you can change from a menu perspective. So if I go through these, one is the oscillator balance, 2 is the cutoff, 3 is the level, 4 or D is the velocity sensitivity, E is the aftertouch, A is the attack time, G is the release time, and E tells me what value, what effects we've got in, and what value I'm actually running with these effects at the moment. If I then go back up like so, as you can see, there are no pages. It's a relatively simple interface, to be honest, and it's literally just telling me how these things are actually set. 0, 0 is kind of the default. You can either accentuate or decentuate these. So if I went there, I can use the value key here to pump it up or pump it down, like that. So that's how you enter this, and this is what this screen gives you. It's relatively simple, not a lot of information available to you. It's really a performance value, if you like. Now, as I said, you have two of those. You have Program 1 and Program B. Synth brass on 0, 0, 0. But that literally is sort of the main, if you like, performance interface on this particular machine. What you would do typically is you would effectively load your programs in, you create your combis, and then thereafter you'd probably be in combi mode in terms of actually playing this in a gigging situation, if you like, and just moving through different combis depending on what songs you were playing in your set. So that's kind of the performance program piece. Now logically you probably expect me to go on to sequence. I'll come back to sequence. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm actually going to look at how do you alter the parameters of a program. And in order to do that, you use this E-program button. So select your program, which is in this instance law, go into E-program, and I can see how this particular sound has been created. and there are various different pieces of information displayed in multiple pages. So if I go through the page, we've got the first page displayed as oscillator mode. If I scroll up, I've got the second is all about the VDF, which is the filter. Then we've got the VDA. Then we've got the things like the pitch bend. Then we've got the effects. And then, very importantly, when you make a change, you must always remember to write the program. Because if you don't remember to write the program, if you then try to save that change off the disk, it will save what you originally had. It won't save what you've now changed it to. So if we go back to the first page here, which is the oscillator, and we scroll down, you can then see, you know, is this a poly or is it a mono? What's the name of it? Where's the start? What's the attack time? What's the attack level? What's the decay time? What's the release time? What's the release level? What's the velocity sensitivity? And what's the time velocity sensitivity? As in, how long does it need to hold? So that's the first page, and if we then go through the second page, you can see you've got a whole bunch of parameters here. EQ intensity, EQ velocity sensitivity, attack decay, etc. That's on the second screen. If you go to the third, one way. If you go to the third screen, we got again EQ time, and if we go to the fourth screen, pitch bend range. This is +2. What happens with the aftertouch? What happens is with the pitch modulation, and what happens with the VDF MG as well. So you can set all these parameters on an individual program basis by going through these effects, these buttons, and then you come to the effect, and effectively, and what you can do is on a particular program you can have two effects running in simultaneously. You can have the effect which is effect 1, which in this case is set to chorus. I could change that by going using the using the value, I think it is, yeah, to change that. So I can say I want no effect, or I can say, if I go back to here, distortion. There's a whole range of effects in here. Chorus 1. So that gives me a chorus effect, and this one, which is concert hall, is obviously a reverb effect. And then you also get you can also set here how much of the signal is going directly into the effect and how much of the signal is bypassing the effect and therefore being driven dry. So that's in a program. I'm not going to go into programming in this video. I just want to sort of give you the sort of basics of where this stuff is. So once you've written your programs, the next thing you want to do is you want to create combis. So if we go and look at Dream After as the combi, and we select eCombi, and that then allows you to actually set up the various combis that will be associated with your particular, programs that will be associated with your particular combi. In this combi number 48, as you can see, I've got a Cloud 9, I've got AE04, which is Guitar 1, I've got Steam, which is B85, and I've got Piano 16, which is AO1, and that gives you that sound. I can change those by going into one of these and selecting this also, so I can put in Steam Synth for argument's sake. That will change the tone. Sorry, I've got to write it first. I must remember to do that. So if I go through to the right piece over here and I say right combination, yes I do. With a bit of luck now, you can hear it's changed the combi, which is what I was after. So the first page effectively is set your program, set your levels, select your velocity curve and your aftertouch curve, which is what this page will do. The second page is all about transpose. Well, it's all about the second set of internal parameters, should I say. The first line is transpose, next one is detune, and the next one is all around the pan pot. So that's left and right balancing. Or if you want it to go out a specific out. Okay, so that one could go out, that's going out of A. So there you go, A, B, C, D. So you can set it to go out of individual jacks on the back of the board if you wanted to. So that way you could split the sound. If we go to the next page, which is all about external, so how does this particular Combi get driven from an external source? So it's being driven from MIDI A channel 1, and you can see that it's program 48 which is being driven. It's allowing us to do velocity from 0 to 127. The velocity curve is 4 and the aftertouch curve is 4 as well. Okay, if we go to the next one, this is all about MIDI channel setup and zoning. So the top window is 127, the bottom window is 1. This particular tone operates from G9 down to C-1. And as you can see, if we look at this one here, it goes from B3, not G9. So that's a shorter range, and you can see that represented in the screen here, that you have some shorter ranges on the keyboard. So that means if I'm playing up in an upper range, this particular tone or program will not trigger. If I then go up to the next one, this is all about what program change information can be received. I'm not going to go through that one. Then we have what actually happens when you tug on the joystick. So as you know, this is an XY joystick. X is that direction, Y is that direction, and it tells you what actually happens when you press or undertake those functions, plus the foot controller. Go up again, what effects are being routed for the Combi. This is in addition to the effects that are on the program. And then obviously the write and rename. So again, if you want to rename this Combi, this is where you would do the renaming from here. So that's how you would write a Combi into the memory of your T1. So once you create your programs, you then can create your Combis. As I said, I skip sequence and I come back to it now. Sequence is this button here, takes you into the onboard sequencer. The onboard sequencer has 19 sequence slots starting at 0, well 20 sequence slots should I say, starting at 0, 0 and going up to 19. Each sequence slot can take 8 voices or 8 programs can be assigned. That's not quite true. 8 combinations can be assigned, should I say, to each sequence slot. So each one of these effectively is a sequence slot. So you've got 8 tracks that you can then record onto this particular machine. I'm not going to go through the sequencer because it is a whole set of videos in its own right on this particular machine. But the menus here are the song basics here. This is called new song. Then we have actually what the track status is. So the track is on, the protection is off. If you want to write a track, you have to have protection off. Any transpose you've got being applied, any detune you've got being applied, and how you want the output to be set. Again, going up through the menus, you can drive the sequencer through MIDI. This is how you would set all that up. And then this is how you would edit the song. So step recording, event editing, erasing tracks, bouncing tracks, all standard sort of stuff you would do if you were writing a sequenced song into the keyboard. Then you have some important stuff like how you're quantizing the actual recording if you're playing it in. If you want to insert or delete or erase measures, you would do that from this particular screen. And then you come into sort of the pattern areas, real-time recording, step recording, etc., etc. And then if you've got effects that you want to run on the actual sequence, this is where you would apply those effects. Applying effects to the sequence, though, I have to be honest, it's better to apply the effects to the combis and the programs rather than trying to apply the effects to the sequence itself. Then you've got new songs, or next song, should I say. What's the next song that comes after this? So that is the sequencer. And as I say, I'm not going to go into great detail on the sequencer because that would be a series of videos in its own right. The next of the buttons of the sequence of 8 buttons here is this global button. And this is effectively where you set the keyboard up. Okay, so this is where all the keyboard parameters are, not the tone and not the program, the tone, the combi parameters. This is actually how the keyboard itself would operate. And there are a series of master setups in here that you might want to look at. Master tune is obviously how far out the keyboard is from a root note. So at the moment this keyboard is set to 0, 0, but I can set that 50 steps up and 50 steps down if I wanted to. I'm going to set that back to 0, 0. Master transpose, so if I needed to play this keyboard in a different key, I can do it here. Now I know that lots of people are have views on transpose functions. I'll be honest with you, I can't play any in lots of keys, so I quite often do use transpose if I have to play in a key that I struggle with. What's your master MIDI channel? Local control switch switches the keyboard or the internal generation of sound on and off, as in the keyboard will still work, the keyboard will still transmit MIDI, but the actual internal tones are switched off. MIDI overflow, programs, aftertouch, control, exclusive messaging, damper switch polarity, which in this case is 0, is minus on the center pin. If we then go up, what does the global drum kit 1 look like and which keys does it respond on? Drum kit 2, drum kit 3, kick 1, the user scale, so I can actually change the scale of the keys in here if I wanted to. This menu is quite important actually. This is, if you want to do sysx loads, you need to make sure that the relevant protect is switched off. So if you want to load combis and programs, program memory must be off. Program memory must be off for programs, combi memory must be off for combis, and sequence memory must be off if you want to load stuff into the sequencer. And then this is all around MIDI data dump. So if you want to dump the information on this particular machine to your computer, this is where you would set that all up. A quick word to the wise, this does not dump PCM data. Okay, it will dump the parameters of how programs and combis are constructed, but it does not dump the PCM data. All right, so just be aware of that, because a lot of people fall foul of that particular one. And that is all the menus under global. And finally we come to this button here, the disk menu. Now this disk menu is effectively where you do all the loading and saving of the sounds or the combis or the programs that you have created on your T1. The first menu is all to do with loading, and it assumes that you're going to load everything from a disk into whatever position. So we have load all combis and programs on the disk, load all sequence data on the disk, load all PCM data on the disk. You can also load PCM samples that have been created on the DS in a DSM format using this particular function as well. The next menu is all about loading individual combis, programs, songs, patterns, drum kits, multi-sounds and drum sounds. The third menu is all about saving. So the first menu assumes that you want to save everything, which is pretty much the assumption they make. You can load individual sounds in to create a combi or a program, but you can't load individual sounds out, if that makes any sense. Then we talk about how to load MIDI data in, so loading MIDI data, saving MIDI data. Then we have the card load function. So those of you familiar with an M1 will remember that an M1 has two cards. It has a PCM card and it has a song Combi program sequence card. You would put those two cards into the back of this particular machine, and then you would use this menu to load the information from those cards into the T1. This is how you save your combis and programs out to cards. And that is the disk menu. So the disk menu effectively covers the floppy disk drive, the cards, the memory cards that you can buy to plug into the back of the machine, and also your basic MIDI functionality is under that disk button. What should be obvious to you by now from watching this video about the basics? And it should be something you look for if you're buying a second-hand T1, because you can't buy a brand new T1, they don't exist. Well, I'm assuming they don't exist anymore because they haven't been made for 30 years. But if these buttons here are not working, you are going to be in for a whole heap of pain, because you can't do anything on this synth without this particular area working to some degree. Yes, you can probably navigate programs by using the program buttons and the combi buttons here, but as soon as you come to do things like loading sounds from disks, or needing to change global parameters, or needing to edit the combis and the programs, you are going to need these buttons and these buttons here and this set of buttons here. So if you go to buy one of these machines and these are not working, or you're having to press them really hard, then negotiate hard, because this machine does not work properly if these do not work. That is that is the reality of this very simplified interface that now exists on this particular machine. Now, I'll be honest with you, when I bought my machine, there were a whole host of stuff that didn't work on it, and I've just noticed that we've got a problem here on button number 7, which I knew about. I found the other day when I was doing something that the actual button itself has broken, so I've got to go. I've got replacement buttons, so I will actually do a replacement on that. But there is a video on the channel when I first bought this machine of me changing all of the tack switches. And I mean all of the tack switches. Every switch from this hand to this hand I changed. Okay? It is a false economy to just change one or two. You might as well change the lot once you strip the machine down and have got the board. I think it's 3 boards, if I remember correctly, that run all these switches and buttons. So you might as well change the lot. Yes, it is a fair amount of soldering. If you're not comfortable with that, it's going to cost you probably about 2-3 hours of a service tech's time to do that soldering. But that is what I would recommend to you. If you buy one of these, or you're going to go and buy one of these second hand, and these buttons aren't working, negotiate to get the price down, because it is not worth top money if you've then got to spend, I don't know, whatever service tech charges in your area. Service techs in the UK tend to charge about £70 to £80 an hour. So 3 hours work, that's nearly that's 250 quid in the UK. Elsewhere in the world, don't know, but just bear that in mind. And on that note, there you go. They're the basics of the T1.